All right. Well, it is just about 7:05. So considering this is a weeknight evening, we don't want to hold everyone up too long tonight. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. To my knowledge, if we have some more attendees filtering in here this evening, they'll kind of be able to do that. So we want to go ahead and kick things off. I would just, like to say good evening to everyone. And on behalf of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever of Illinois and IRAP, thank you all very much for joining us tonight for the Illinois Access Recreational Program, or IRAP, Benefits for Landowners webinar. My name is Cassie Roush, and I am the Habitat Partnership Specialist with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever of Illinois. This evening, we're going to discuss the benefits that the Illinois Recreational Access Program, or IRAP, provides to Illinois landowners and how its goals overlap with the habitat conservation mission of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. So before we begin, I would just like to go over a few important webinar reminders for all of our participants this evening. To avoid excess noise, we will have all participants' microphones and webcams disabled throughout the presentation. If you do have questions for a presenter, you can use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. We will have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. However, if you have a question for a particular slide, feel free to add it in the chat. We will do our best to answer questions throughout the presentation. This webinar is being recorded. We will send an email with a copy of the PowerPoint and a YouTube link to this recording to all registered participants, excuse me. So to do a quick overview of the topics that are going to be discussed tonight, we're going to begin with introductions and welcoming our speakers who are joining us this evening. We will then go ahead and give a brief overview of how Pheasants and Quail Forever and IRAP organizations interact and how their missions overlap. We'll discuss what is the Illinois Recreational Access Program and give a brief overview. We'll talk about why IRAP is needed, how does IRAP work, which includes incentives for landowners, lease payments, liability insurance, management plans, and habitat bonus. We'll talk about IRAP activities, IRAP participant ethics and responsibilities. We'll go over some frequently asked questions, how you can contact IRAP, and at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. So to go ahead and start things off, as I had mentioned, my name is Cassidy Roush, and I am the Habitat Partnership Specialist with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever of Illinois. We have a few individuals who will be attending the webinar this evening to provide clarification or answer any questions at the end. Those individuals are Tammy Miller, the IDNR Special Programs Manager with the Division of Private Lands, Tom Branson, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever Habitat Strike Team Coordinator, and our Strike Team technicians, Ryan Kurtz and Dominic Hunt. So I'll go ahead and start and introduce myself and give you all a little bit of background on myself. I have been with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever since June of 2022. I'm originally from Ohio, where I pursued an education in wildlife and fisheries management at Hawking Technical College. After completing my associate's degree, I transferred to West Virginia University, where I completed my bachelor's degree in wildlife and fisheries resources management. During my time at WVU, I was a part of various research projects involving songbirds. Upon graduation, I accepted a position through SIU in Carbondale as a part of the bobwhite quail and grassland bird studies at Burning Star Wildlife Management Area. So with that being said, songbirds and upland game birds certainly hold a special place in my heart. I enjoy spending my free time with my 13-month-old daughter, Meadow, as well as birding, hiking, and native plant gardening.
All right, well, I will go ahead and introduce myself as part of the IRAP team here today as a special guest. My name is Alex Davis. I am the IRAP Outreach and Marketing Coordinator. I started here with IRAP in September of 2020, so it's been just over 2 years. I grew up in a rural area just outside Springfield, so I'm a local to this area. I have a bachelor's degree in anthropology with a minor in zoology from SIU Carbondale. I graduated from there in 2013, and I got my master's in environmental studies with a focus on sustainable development and policy in 2017. As a grad student, I interned with IDNR's Division of Natural Heritage, where I actually worked with the database that tracks listed species across Illinois. I also studied wildlife management on private lands. This was then followed by 2 years as an ecological forestry technician at Nelson Land Management, where I got to conduct invasive species removal, timber stand improvement, and prescribed burning. In my free time, I enjoy native plant gardening, hiking, mushroom hunting, and nature photography. And so I will pass it on to Tony.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Kloppenborg, and I'm the IRAP coordinator for the north part of the state. I've been with IRAP since 2016. I went to school at Western Illinois University, and I enjoy hunting and everything outdoors. Next up, we have Shane Sinclair.
Yeah, as Tony said, I'm Shane Sinclair. I'm kind of the new face on the block around here. I've been with IRAP for about 5 months now, learning a lot in my short time though with IRAP already. Before that, I suppose, was a student at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, a lot of Carbondale connections in this group. I went through the forestry program there and graduated in 2018 with a forest hydrology degree, which has a lot of connections to the natural world as far as the soil and water science behind the forestry as well. So pretty diverse. During the summers, during my college career, performed fisheries field work through the Illinois Natural History Survey at the Prairie Research Institute in Champaign-Urbana. So got a lot of field season exposure there. And like I said, past 5 months been with IRAP and as the Southern coordinator. So I cover pretty much everything south of Interstate 72.
All right. Thank you all very much for those introductions. We can go ahead and get started with the first slide of the webinar this evening and why you all have joined us here tonight. So how do the missions of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever and IRAP overlap, and how do our organizations interact? If you're an Illinois Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever chapter member, you know that Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever's mission is to conserve pheasants, quail, and other wildlife through habitat improvements, public access, education, and conservation advocacy. So put very simply, it is to create and improve wildlife habitat. Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever provide assistance through technical, educational, and financial to cooperators who might be private landowners and land managers, land trusts, and partners that are interested in establishing or improving habitat for wildlife. Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever believes that in Illinois, there are 3 simple keys to improving habitat: creating more habitat, creating better habitat, because the right kind of habitat produces better wildlife populations, and improving public access. We all know that hunters are the strongest advocates for wildlife habitat, and if we lose hunters, we lose habitat. So Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever partners with agencies like the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS, the Farm Service Agency, known as FSA, Soil and Water Conservation Districts, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, and the Illinois DNR.
So that brings us to IRAP. The Illinois Recreational Access Program is also funded through the NRCS Farm Bill. It's administered by the Illinois DNR and Sangamon County Soil and Water Conservation District staff. IRAP's goals are also to get more habitat established on private lands while simultaneously providing more public access, particularly to Illinois' youth, first-time veteran and or displaced hunters and anglers. IRAP partnered with Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever in 2014 to create a habitat strike team to assist with habitat improvement and restoration projects on IRAP enrolled properties. Since then, we've been able to implement prescribed burns, native tree and grassland plantings, invasive species removal, and more on over 17,000 acres of private land. So an overview of the program. Lack of access is one of the biggest issues facing recreationists today, and it is the #1 reason lapsed hunters tend to give when asked why they no longer hunt. According to data provided by the Illinois Conservation Congress in 2009, 2/3 of all hunters actually rely on private land to pursue game, and access to that private land was getting more difficult. So the Congress therefore recommended that the Illinois Department of Natural Resources develop a public access program on private land. This was accomplished in 2011 after the IDNR applied for and received a voluntary public access habitat incentive program grant through the NRCS Farm Bill. So landowners were receptive to the idea of controlled public access. So that's where participants actually have to apply for access and be awarded a specific site. And after being provided liability insurance during IRAP activities. Many landowners were also drawn to the idea of receiving assistance with habitat management. So within just the first few years, IRAP had over 10,000 acres leased. IRAP is partnered with, as I mentioned, the Sangamon County Soil and Water Conservation District, whose staff manages the program along with IDNR staff, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, the National Wild Turkey Federation, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, and also the National Great Rivers Research and Educational Center, through which we have also partnered to create a second habitat strike team, as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. All right, so we kind of talked about why IRAP is needed. We'll get a little bit more into that now as far as public access. Many of you may or may not know, approximately 97% of Illinois is actually privately owned, which ranks it as 46th within the United States for publicly owned land. Since the 1970s, there's been a drastic decline in the number of Illinois hunters. And research indicates that lack of accessible land is a major constraint for many current or prospective hunters. As Cassidy mentioned, a reduction in hunting participation has substantial ramifications. There are biological ramifications to consider. An overabundance of some species can lead to increased competition of resources, disease risk, and habitat destruction. Economical hunters provide, as many of you probably know, much of the conservation funding in the US, and a reduced number of hunters leads to reduced conservation funding. And social, fewer hunters means there are fewer advocates for natural resource management and conservation efforts. So IRAP provides additional areas that can be used by the Illinois public for outdoor recreational activities, and also promotes hunter recruitment, retention, and re-engagement in outdoor recreation. So another reason that IRAP is needed is habitat incentives. So regardless of which game you're after, good habitat management facilitates greater overall ecological quality and species diversity. Habitat management can attract and reestablish greater numbers of game species and other beneficial wildlife. It also provides better recreational opportunities and experiences. Managing habitat on less than 3%, which is the total of Illinois public land, is not an effective way to manage statewide populations and resources. Private land management is therefore critical to enhancing and restoring habitat for a host of wildlife and plant species. It also ensures recreational opportunities are available for future generations. Infestations of non-native invasive species like bush honeysuckle and autumn olive have become an increasing problem for private landowners. Non-native invasive species outcompete native shrubs and forbs that provide vital habitat and food sources for native pollinators and other wildlife. IRAP management plans can address non-native invasive species infestations while also promoting habitat for rare and unique wildlife. And you can actually see in this slide, we have a picture of the spotted dusky salamander. It was actually found on an IRAP property in Pope County. So IRAP management plans, they promote best management practices like invasive species removal, timber stand improvement, or also known as TSI, and prescribed burning. All of these practices promote more open woodlands that can support habitat requirements of many Illinois game species like turkey and deer, while also ensuring that other important wildlife has adequate habitat. So open woodlands can also provide better site access, easier hiking and retrieval of harvested game, which ultimately promotes a more enjoyable recreational experience, as well as better wildlife viewing and hunting opportunities. So, how does IRAP work? Leasing private property for public access. The Illinois Recreational Access Program provides lease funding to private landowners throughout Illinois in exchange for specific semi-controlled public hunting and fishing access. In addition, technical and cost share assistance is provided to landowners to improve habitat on their land. Any private landowner who owns approximately 40 acres or more of qualifying hunting land in Illinois and or an acre or more of accessible pond or stream bank may qualify. Semi-controlled access by the public is restricted to specific dates, times, and number of persons allowed. Leases are written for 4 years and can be renewed at the end of the lease. And IRAP provides each landowner a $2 million liability umbrella for IRAP hunting and fishing activities. So continuing on how this works with public access, any licensed hunter, Illinois resident or non-resident, who has completed their hunter safety course if required and who complies with all Illinois hunting laws can register and reserve a site or apply online to hunt an IRAP site. Applicants must complete and submit an online application or register before accessing an IRAP site. All participants, including non-hunting mentors and or observers, must additionally complete a liability waiver and non-hunting mentor or observer contact information form, just so we know who all is out there during all time periods. Small game hunting, such as squirrel and rabbit hunting and pond and riverbank fishing, require users to register through IRAP and make an online reservation. So this is not through the online application process. Other IRAP activities require permits distributed through the Illinois DNR Springfield office and do not require online reservation. Those include deer hunting, turkey hunting, waterfowl hunting, and upland game hunting. As we mentioned, we really want to engage youth, first-time hunters, and those who are currently serving or have served in the U.S. military. All activities adhere to the most current edition of the Illinois Digest of Hunting and Trapping Regulations. In addition, some activities, such as youth shotgun deer and youth turkey, allow scouting before the assigned hunting period. Scouting is not allowed any other time, no exceptions. No permanent stands or blinds are permitted. Damage or removal of vegetation is prohibited. Registered hunters are the only people allowed to hunt in the designated area. IRAP participants are not to contact the landowner unless prior approval from IRAP is granted. And likewise, landowners are not to contact the participant unless there is an issue with access, parking, there's an emergency, or prior permission is given. IRAP likes to be the middleman between the participants and the landowners, and that way we always know who's out there and when. All hunters are required to also complete an online post-hunt survey, and that helps us keep tabs on the habitat, the suitability of the habitat, and the kind of experiences that our participants are having on these property, the IRAP lease property. So that said, we will get to the incentives for landowners. So Illinois landowners will receive a lease payment based on the number of acres that they enroll and which activities they allow. So they also get a habitat management plan written or updated for their enrolled acres and become eligible for assistance to implement habitat restoration projects according to that plan. Enrolled lands are often the recipient, as we mentioned, invasive and non-native species removal, prescribed burns, native plantings, timber stand improvement, and more. Many of these habitat management practices, as we mentioned, contribute to increased variety of songbirds, greater diversity in plant and animal species, and even reduced crop depredation by deer. So IRAP acres can actually also be simultaneously enrolled in other private lands programs. In fact, IRAP actually targets landowners already enrolled in the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, CREP, the Conservation Reserve Program, and the Wetland Reserve Easement Program, as well as those properties near larger metropolitan areas, which we will get into here soon. So we will talk about the lease payment first, unless you guys had anything to add there, but lease payments are mainly determined by the number of acres a landowner is willing to enroll, as I mentioned, and which activities they allow the public access to on their property. We have different periods of archery deer hunting, for example, that we like to describe it kind of like an a la carte deal. You can sign up for 2 of the 3 archery periods or just 1. We also have youth shotgun weekend. So it's really up to you what you are comfortable allowing on your property. Like I said, that also coincides with how many acres you enroll. There may be additional factors that the IRAP coordinator will take into account when they visit your property, such as the existence of suitable habitat in the county where your property is located. Also the layout of the property. The IRAP coordinator will discuss this process with you, the landowner, over the phone, and then arrange a time to conduct a site visit. Leases are for 4 years and begin as soon as the landowner signs the lease. IRAP landowners are paid annually and may receive a 20% habitat bonus, which we'll talk about more later, at the end of their 4-year lease if they show evidence of having completed habitat restoration projects. Landowners are strongly encouraged to undertake management goals on their own. We really want to make IRAP a way to help educate landowners and give them the tools to do this on their property. As I mentioned before, a bonus lease payment incentive is also something we pay to landowners if their property is in one of 30 targeted counties near large metropolitan areas around Chicago, the Quad Cities, and the Metro East area around St. Louis, and properties enrolled in our NRCS wetland easement program, in the wetland easement program. And once a property is enrolled, the IRAP coordinator will create access maps, install parking signs, and may mark property boundaries with purple paint if necessary. So we will go on to the insurance, the liability insurance. When leasing property to IDNR for IRAP activities, landowners are provided a $2 million liability umbrella coverage. And this is paid by IRAP annually in case of any injury or damage should occur during an assigned hunting or fishing activity. It's pretty cut and dry there. And with that, I will actually turn things over to Tony and Shane, who can provide more detail on the management plans and the completion of habitat projects on IRAP leased property.
Okay, IRAP coordinators will help to either develop or update an existing management plan for IRAP enrolled landowners. Once a project is decided upon, a habitat project agreement is executed that specifies the work to be done and who will be doing it. IRAP pays up to 60% cost share on projects. The landowner's cost share can be in kind, cash, or both. As previously mentioned, landowners can also receive a bonus to their lease payment in the end of their 4-year lease for a habitat work completed on their own. Typical management plans include non-native invasive species treatment or removal, timber stand improvement, native tree, grass, and forest plantings, and prescribed burning. IRAP is partnered with PFQF and the National Great Rivers Research and Education Center to implement IRAP management plans. Habitat projects have been implemented on more than 17,000 acres of private land leased through IRAP.
Oh,
Yeah, Tony, I'll hit this next one here. We talked about how IRAP landowners have a management plan, and Tony kind of alluded to invasive species control being commonly one of the first things we start to address. It depends on what the goals of your habitat are, what habitat you have, and what it can provide with you as the landowner as its top operating potential. But removing invasive species is generally a pretty important first step in most management plans. You're typically going to see that within the first 2 or 3 years of most 10-year management plans, having those invasive species under control first. This is typically followed by prescribed burns if we can get one to carry. It's not a guarantee. Most of the times, these honeysuckle and autumn olive colonies have suppressed oak regeneration to the point where there's not very good oak litter on the ground. But if we can get that invasive species cover removed and the overstory and some regeneration can kind of come back, you can potentially within 3, 4, 5 years down the line in that management plan start to implement these prescribed burns, which we'll talk about here in a little bit more. But collectively, those begin to open up that dense, overcrowded forest floor that drive through Illinois, almost going to see exclusively as you drive along most highways. But that allows more sunlight to penetrate through the canopy and kind of foster that regeneration of those native trees, grasses, and forbs. To do that, it's pretty common that we start, or at least implement in the beginning, manual removal with a chainsaw, and then spray the stumps with an herbicide. There's also basal bark spraying, which is a selective method of controlling woody vegetation that entails coating an oil-based appropriate herbicide around the stem or the bark of the targeted species. Forest mulching with a skid steer is often used with heavy infestations. This is where, I'm sure you guys have seen it, and it's pictured there in the bottom right of your screen, that skid steer with a giant spinning blade kind of crushes and mulches the plants and leaves stumps that can be treated with the herbicide later. And then there shown on the top right of those pictures is the aerial spraying, which is what we like to try as a first line of defense or first line of offense, I suppose, for those heavy infestations of bush honeysuckle. It's a relatively new method that we've been working with over the past few years. Invasive species like bush honeysuckle and autumn olive retain and take up nutrients through their leaves for longer than most species. And if you care to look around in that November timeframe, those, they stick out like a sore thumb, just being pretty much the only green thing left throughout most of the forests in Illinois and a lot of the Midwest. But that makes it for a small window that we can really target these with an aerial approach, which is really right around Thanksgiving, anywhere in that November to December timeframe, when weather allows. We'll target those species, additional spot treatments later may be used or may be necessary, but we really try doing that aerial attack first on those really heavily infested areas.
Okay, so after you get your invasive species in control, one thing that will usually be recommended in your plan would be timber stand improvement. Timber stand improvement practices typically involve a process of selective culling or thinning of the timber stand. TSI promotes open canopies that facilitate the growth of native herbaceous plants, as well as the regeneration of species like oak and hickory. This provides better habitat for game species like deer and turkey.
Another thing is that we help implement are kind of those native tree, forb, and grass plantings that Tony said earlier. Planting and set aside acres of native trees, forbs, and grasses directly contributes to the establishment of wildlife habitat. Native trees and forbs are host species for many pollinating insects. They also provide vital food sources for other native pollinators like hummingbirds and cover for native grassland birds. There's plenty of places that we either have or we would like to have more habitat to that maybe aren't perfect fits for some of the government programs, but can be nice little pockets that we can plant and kind of just make little nice micro habitats for various species and really take up the whole potential of the square footage of your property. So, we always like to try and implement those when we can.
Okay, for prescribed burning offers an array of management and habitat benefits. It can be a very useful tool in the long-term management of an area. Most invasive species and shade-tolerant species are intolerant of occasional fire. Prescribed burns therefore help control the establishment and spread of undesirable tree species and non-native invasive species and their seedbeds. It also helps manage native plant diversity and composition.
Yeah, just kind of going back and reiterating what Alex mentioned earlier with that 20% habitat bonus, that comes at the very end of your 4-year your lease period with IRAP once enrolling. And landowners who implement these habitat management projects on their property get that 20% at the very end, because we've helped get that project started. Ideally, we've helped you educate you on why we do it, how we do it, potentially what you could do to do it going forward. Just kind of going back to that 97% of Illinois being privately owned, there's a lot of properties that need this helping hand to get started. And our focus is definitely to be that starting point and to be the educational source, put you in touch with your local prescribed burn association, get you the contacts and the resources that you need for the long haul, because ultimately your ground is your investment. And we want you to have kind of that skin in the game to continue with this. So that 20% bonus there at the very end of your lease is there to incentivize you to kind of keep that going. And if there is a financial piece that you may need to get an outside contractor to maybe help you with, say, some fire line, you've kind of got that that piece to help you with that first step after the initial 4-year process. So that's kind of in essence where the habitat bonus came from.
Yeah, we understand that it's no doubt a daunting prospect when you're looking at a lot of acreage and you've just got a really thick infestation of honeysuckle, and aerial foliar spraying is a great way to get started. But a lot of invasive species management requires just hitting it each year. You're really never going to just one and done with a treatment or management practice. So we're really about trying to provide enrolled landowners with the tools and the educational resources that they need to do it on their own. So with that, we will go on to the different IRAP activities that that you can enroll in and allow on your property. IRAP started out, as I mentioned, in 2011. We only started with youth turkey hunting, fishing, and hiking, actually. But once it became established and successful, IRAP actually added first-time adult spring turkey hunting. A demand for IRAP has since grown, and landowners have also become more comfortable with its success. So more hunting activities have been introduced. And now, as of 2023, we have actually grown to include over 27,000 acres and over 50 counties that are now leased for youth turkey hunting, adult spring turkey hunting seasons 3 and 4, youth shotgun deer hunting, archery deer hunting. As I mentioned, there are 3 periods, waterfowl hunting, upland game hunting, rabbit and squirrel hunting, small game, and pond and riverbank fishing. So with our participants out there, we really try to stress to them that, this is a privilege for them to be able to access this private land. Our program relies on landowners voluntarily enrolling their properties. So we really stress to them that we want them to treat, the property that they're on with respect and with care, and leave it ultimately in better shape than it was when they first got there. They're expected to treat the property well by picking up all trash, not damaging or removing any vegetation, parking only in designated parking locations, staying on designated roads, and like I said, just making sure that they, when they leave it, it looks better than when they found it. And so with that, we'll open things up to questions. We do have a few frequently asked questions here, but yeah.
All right, guys. It does look like we have one question from Shirley in the chat. She asks, she says that her farm is certified organic, and she wonders if IRAP would support non-herbicide methods for invasive species removal.
Yeah, as anything with organic, you're going to have more labor-intensive care involved. With row crop organic farming, it takes, generally a lot of repeated tillage to keep the weeds down. So if you're thinking about, managing invasive species, say honeysuckle, it's going to take a lot of manual care on the front end of things to keep the you know, to get it down to begin with. But instead of getting that herbicide treatment in there, you're likely going to be doing a lot more manual removal until you can get a good either grass or you know, leaf litter layer down there to use fire for your supposed manual removal going forward, and kind of hopefully as the resprouts continue and that plant's using its remainder of its resources to continue resprouting, that you're just continually stressing it out and waiting for your native plant communities to reestablish over top of it. So it's going to take a lot more effort and a longer push of efforts, but it could be done.
As you said, a lot of that, if you mess with them, if you cut them back, unfortunately, it'll just release. I don't know what the botanist, but they'll proliferate even more sometimes if you don't use herbicide. But there are ways that you can. I mean, I know of pulling the root system. They usually have like a tri-root system. So I don't know. There are definitely, I know you can do different organic, not necessarily relying on pesticides, but Shane really hit the nail on the head. If you can get it down to where it's manageable and you can use prescribed burns, that's probably your best bet on that. My 2 cents worth anyway.
Cassidy, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you guys for your answer, your response to that first question there. We do have Jason asking if there's a list of the lease payments per acre for the various hunting access options.
Hi, this is Tammy. So we don't publish a list of what we pay per acre. As we had mentioned earlier, it's kind of an a la carte. So we pay per activity based on the number of acres. It's a formula that we have on a spreadsheet. So it's very difficult to say. Most of our landowners will receive checks at the end of the year, anywhere from a couple $100 to several $1,000, depending on the acreage and the activities that they do enroll in. I know it's not the answer you wanted, but it's, I just can't throw numbers out there. It wouldn't make sense.
All right, Tammy, thank you. We do have Shirley following up with her question about the non-herbicide invasive species methods here. So she asks, will IRAP help pay for non-herbicide methods at the 60% level?
Hi, Shirley, it's Tammy again. Yeah, we can pay up to 60%. Again, it just depends on the workload and what activities that you will sign up for. The more activities a landowner signs up for, that we're able to get more users out there, where we can do more for you on your property. And again, if you have 1,000 acres, we don't have the manpower to work on 1,000 acres and leave the other 26,000 acres behind. So we would have to come out and look at it and see what we can do. But we would have no problem doing the 60% at least to get you started and get a plan put together for you.
We have a request about some more information about the strike team. So if our strike team coordinator or the technicians would like to hop on and I guess maybe, ask if this is a little bit more of a, maybe get a little bit more of a specific question about the strike team here.
This is Tammy. I'll do a quick overview. So we have 2 strike teams right now with the IRAP program. Again, they started back in 2014, I believe, 2016. 14, yeah. And those have continued a lot. Their funding comes from PFQF and the National Great Rivers Research and Education Center, and then Habitat Stamp funds. Unfortunately, they're where they are located, they can only travel so far. So we have one down in the Alton area that travels around a 100-mile radius. And then we have one up north by I'm trying to think of Macomb area, and they also have a radius that they travel. Each strike team has a coordinator and 2 technicians that work for them, and they get guidance from our IRAP coordinators on what to do and where to work at, and things like that. They also have time from time to time interact with landowners to let them know what they're doing and try to educate landowners at the same time. And if any of the folks want to add on to this, feel free to.
Kind of piggybacking off of what her answer was on that they do have a range that they have to operate in. If you are, I mean, ideally we would love to have strike teams dotted throughout the state so that we could cater to the agreements of the IRAP landowners, you know, at the flip of a switch. However, they're either the workload that they're currently under puts us in a spot where they may not likely get to you within that growing season or the dormant season, depending on the work that needs to be done. Or if you're far outside that, you know, roughly 90, 100-mile range that they typically work in, we will and can send out some bids and try and get a third-party contractor lined up to work with you. So there's, I'm sure plenty of people have seen, you know, those, just taking an example, the forestry mulchers is a pretty popular thing. We personally do not own one of those. We generally have that contracted out from, you know, a local, whether it's a farmer or somebody else that has one that has an LLC that they've started to do this for landowners. We can you know, propose a bid and try and get those contracts worked out to hopefully get to those sooner. And those still abide by that 60-40 split of cost share when creating those third-party contracts.
We do a lot of third-party contracts, by the way, a lot of in Southern Illinois and Northeastern Illinois as well. Our partner, Sangamon County Soil and Water, oversees that. So we do get bids, and then they end up paying for those contracts. We do a habitat contract with the landowner, and then the landowner will either pay or do an in-kind cost share for that to get that done. Aerial spraying, of course, is a third-party contractor. For those who aren't familiar with aerial spraying, it's very, very cost effective when you're looking at a per acre price, which would be somewhere in the $70, $80 range, versus having a crew come in and working on the same property for anywhere from $250 to $350 an acre. So it's a lot more cost effective, and we can get a lot more done in a short period of time.
All right, guys, we do have one more question here. The question is, will IRAP help pay for building forest access trails?
So we have in the past helped with access. Again, we are the recreational access program. So if we need to build a trail or an area or put a culvert in so that the participant, like a deer hunter or turkey hunter, needs to use that to get to access the property, we can pay for that. If it's just putting trails through a forest for your personal use, no, we can't do that.
All right, Dallas asked, can you mention the differences between a private landowner and a municipality or governmental landowner for the sign-up process?
Sure. So the majority of all of our landowners are private, and the funding that we get from NRCS only allows us to pay private landowners or not-for-profit organizations. We have a few of those. Now, I will say that we have worked with a couple of municipalities, one being Springfield. 2 years ago, we started archery deer hunting around Lake Springfield, more of a culling effort because the deer were doing so much damage. We do not pay the city of Springfield, but we will run the application process, assigning hunters to the sites, do the mailings, put up signs, things like that. We just cannot pay a lease payment to a municipality or a local or state unit of government.
All right. Barb asked if the IRAP has ever used drones.
If that's in relation to, well, I mean, drones can be used for a lot of different things. If it's just surveillance, you know, I don't believe we have in the past.
No, but Tony might be able to add to this. We are looking at using drones right now, potentially buying a drone to use it for FOIA application and potential seeding and things like that. Tony, do you want to add to that? It's something that we're actually looking at the moment.
Yes, we are investigating using drones for aerial spray applications. We're just kind of kicking the tires right now, just looking to see what we can do with it. But that may be a possibility in the future.
So, sorry, I'll answer a little bit. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Kozlich. I know there's been a lot of talk recently, and I've been seeing more and more about the aerial application utilizing drones. I'm not sure, I can't speak on the NGREC side of things, but I do know on PF, we occasionally will use drones. We're using a lot of it for marketing footage, but we do occasionally utilize those when doing the sky burns, for doing spot checks and checking for areas that when we're doing larger types of work. So with drones, there's a lot of use, and we'll still, all of us are kind of learning what we can do with those, especially as they get more powerful and better.
All right. We've got one more question here. This question is the 60% based on actual cost, or is it a set amount, like as with equip?
So it kind of goes both ways, Shirley. We get bids on most of this stuff, so it's the 60% of what we bid, but we do have a few things that we try to keep within the same set amount as equip or close to it. But for the most of it, it is based off of the bids that we do. It's a combination of kind of both. And if any of the coordinators want to add to that. Oh, okay. So Shirley, I see your second question with this is, am I understanding correctly that IRAP will find contractors on my behalf, or is a landowner responsible? So to get you started, we do our very best to find the contractors, and we do our very best to do the bid. We don't do it for every single thing in your habitat plan. We want to get you started. So yes, we can help you with finding contractors. We usually have a list of those that we work with, and would entertain new ones to the list as well. So I hope that answers your question.
All right. Barb has another question for us. Are there any other activities than those listed, such as birding?
We do not have other activities like birding, hiking, or canoe access. At one point, I believe, in its early beginnings, IRAP did offer other, I guess, non-hunting activities, but we found that we weren't really getting as much demand among participants for those activities, unfortunately. So it just felt like, you know, payments were being made for properties that weren't really being accessed enough to really justify the payments. So we dropped those activities. Not to say that we couldn't potentially someday, you know, start doing that again, but that's just what we found to be most to make the most sense for the program. So
All right, we have Shirley asking, do we anticipate changes in IRAP from the new Farm Bill?
Shirley, at this moment, I do not anticipate changes. Every year I've applied for the funding. They've changed it a little bit on what we can apply for and what we can't, or percentages. I'm hoping this year we'll have more money in the Farm Bill for this and the VPA funding, and allow us to do more habitat with that funding. The last Farm Bill, they limited us on the habitat that we were able to do with it. So we've tried to find other funds to get some of the habitat done. We did have a canoe group wanting to do canoe access. And if they get back to me, we may pilot that in an area. I want to say it's over by the Mackinac. But I'm waiting for them to get back to me, and maybe we'll try to pilot that with the new Farm Bill.
Thank you everyone for those questions. That was a great conversation that we got started with both of our organizations here. So yeah, thank you again for putting those questions in the chat for us to answer.
With that, I guess we'll just end with the contact information for IRAP. We're definitely looking for more landowners like you guys. So one thing that we really like to emphasize to everyone is that we like to think of IRAP as a win-win-win, win for the landowner because of the management practices that you can have implemented on your property, and the benefits to wildlife that then come from that, as well as you know, the unforgettable memories that you can be helping a lot of first-time and youth hunters get. So it's yeah, make sure that you guys check out our website. Actually, we just recently completed a video that actually highlights the experience of a first-time hunting family, a man and his two sons who went out for the first time. His name is Ramiro Juarez. He and his two sons just took up archery deer hunting and turkey hunting, and just were able to learn and really feel comfortable getting out to do those things for the first time through IRAP, because being on IRAP, and he couldn't have done it without that private land. It's the only way that he could feel comfortable doing that for the first time. So we're always looking for more suitable land to lease. And if for more information, feel free to give us a call at 217-782-0137. It probably will be me that you talk to because I answer the phone a lot. You can also email us, the dnr.irap@illinois.gov email there, and find our website online for more information. There's a landowner enrollment form that you can actually print out and fill out, scan, or mail it to us. And you can always get a hold of one of our coordinators. If you email us, we will direct you to either Tony or Shane, depending on what county you're in. So that's about all I have. So.
All right, everyone. Well, it's just about 8 o'clock, so we're pretty much right on time here. As long as we don't have any more questions from our participants this evening, I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up. As I had mentioned earlier, this webinar was recorded, so we will be making that available to all the participants this evening to go ahead and go back and view if you had to miss something, or if you just kind of wanted to get a refresher or answer any other questions you have that might pop up that could be covered in the slides. So thank you all very much for attending tonight, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.